Imagine like a historical artifact, maybe a piece of evidence, just sitting in a box somewhere, maybe a basement, for 30, 40 years.
Yeah, just collecting dust.
Right. And it's been looked at, analyzed with whatever tools they had back then, and basically declared useless.
Mm-hmm.
Dead end. But then suddenly this whole new field of science pops up. And that thing, that object that was just sitting there, it becomes the key that unlocks decades of pain, of injustice.
It's incredible, really.
That's pretty much the reality of cold case investigation today. Thanks to the just amazing precision of modern forensics, specifically DNA, and this revolutionary thing, genetic genealogy.
Yeah, Gigi, it's changing everything.
We're literally watching these old, rusted locks, cases everyone gave up on, finally click open. Science today is reaching back, identifying killers who honestly thought they were home free.
And bringing closure. That's the huge thing. Closure that families thought they'd never, ever get.
What's really wild here is we're not just talking about, like, labs getting a little bit better.
No, not at all. It's a total shift, a paradigm shift, you could say, in how justice works. We've moved from relying on these very limited official databases, CODIS,
Right.
to using the power of all that ancestry testing data people submit voluntarily. It's massive. We've pulled together sources on 5 specific cases, really tough ones from the 80s and 90s.
Cases that stumped investigators for, well, generations.
Exactly. But all of them saw these huge breakthroughs, or were totally solved and wrapped up in court just in 2021.
So that's our mission for this deep dive. We're digging into these 5 wins. And it's more than just, who did it.
Oh, yeah.
It's about the twists, the wrong turns investigators took for decades, the vital clues just waiting in an evidence locker.
The legal hoops they had to jump through sometime.
Right. And those final aha moments.
Yeah.
The ones that turn a cold case into solved history. We want you to get not just who the culprit was, but how today's science finally made catching them possible.
So yeah, buckle up. These stories, they're full of investigative turns, amazing science, and just incredible human resilience.
Okay, let's kick off this deep dive with a case defined by, well, a single really specific item. A pair of orange socks.
The infamous orange socks.
Exactly. This is the case of Annette Schnee and Bobbie Jo Oberholtzer, a double murder back in 1982. Up in the mountains near Breckenridge, Colorado.
And that setting, Breckenridge in winter 82, it's important, pretty isolated back then.
Right.
The timeline itself is just confusing and heartbreaking right from the start.
Yeah.
Bobbie Jo Oberholtzer, she was 29, a receptionist, last seen leaving work about 7:30 p.m., January 6, 1982.
She told her husband, Jeff, she'd gotten a ride home, probably hitchhiking, which apparently was more common then.
Yeah, definitely more common. So Jeff starts searching when she doesn't come home by midnight. The next morning, a farmer finds her driver's license like 30 miles outside town.
Wow, 30 miles.
Yeah. So Jeff and his search party then find her backpack and, crucially, a glove spattered with blood and some bloody tissues nearby in a snowy field.
And then just hours later.
Hours later, they find Bobbie Jo's body. 15 miles from where they found the backpack, she'd been shot. Twice.
Horrifying. And the terror just ramps up because
the same day they find Bobbie Jo's body, another young woman, Annette Schnee, 21, a cocktail waitress from Frisco nearby, she's reported missing.
And she also often hitchhiked.
Exactly. To and from her job at the Holiday Inn. So immediately police are thinking, okay, 2 young women, both hitchhikers, both vanished the same night. These have to be connected.
But they had no physical link yet, and no body for Annette for 6 long months.
Right. Then, July 3rd, 1982, Annette's body is found, 13 miles from where Bobbie Jo's body was discovered.
And this is where the sock comes in.
This is the moment, that single devastating piece of physical evidence. One orange sock found near Bobbie Jo's body.
Months earlier.
Months earlier, and it perfectly matches the other orange sock that Annette Schnee was found wearing when her body was discovered.
So that implies the killer interacted with both women, maybe chased them across different locations?
It strongly suggests it. A struggle, maybe. Something that led to one sock being lost here, the other found there.
That sock. It was the key clue, but it also led the investigation down, well, completely the wrong path for years.
A major misdirection. Because the prime suspect for a very long time became Bobbie Jo's own husband, Jeff Oberholtzer.
Why him? Just because he knew both.
Pretty much. He was involved in the search, obviously, but yeah, he knew both women. He initially denied knowing Annette well, but then admitted he'd given her a ride once, hitchhiking, gave her his business card.
Which they found in her wallet.
So circumstantially, connecting him to both victims, he was the most immediate, most available suspect.
And the police built this whole theory around the socks, didn't they?
They did. It was meticulous. But based on those circumstantial links, the idea was killer picks up Annette first, assaults her about 20 miles south. She runs, loses a sock, gets shot.
Then he drives back to Breckenridge.
Picks up Bobbie Jo, drives 10 miles south this time, assaults her, she runs, loses the second sock, then gets shot twice. Jeff's connection to both kind of fit, and his initial timeline statements were apparently a bit shaky.
So he's under this cloud of suspicion for nearly a decade.
Almost 10 years. He always maintained his innocence, said he was home with a friend who was visiting, but the alibi wasn't airtight immediately. But science eventually caught up.
Ah, the DNA. The turning point.
The huge turning point. Early 90s, that blood found on Bobbie Jo's glove, the tissues near her backpack, everyone just assumed it was hers, right? But they retested it using the DNA tech they had then, which was still pretty new.
Yeah.
And it was revolutionary for the case. The blood was from an unknown male. And crucially, it was not Jeff Oberholtzer's DNA.
Wow. So he's cleared. Finally.
Officially cleared. Same test ruled out other guys they'd looked at, like a cab driver, Thomas Edward Luther, who'd actually bragged about the murders, which is weird.
Very weird.
And also a known spree killer, Tracy Petrocelli. Neither of them matched the male DNA profile either.
Okay, so now they have this clear male DNA profile. It belongs to the killer. It's sitting in CODIS, the national database, for, nearly 30 years?
Pretty much, almost 3 decades, but no hits.
Why not, if they had the killer's DNA?
Well, that's the limitation of the older tech. Traditional forensic DNA, the STR testing, it compares about 20 specific markers. You need a direct match or a really close family match, like a father or son, to someone already in that official database, someone arrested or convicted.
So if the killer kept his nose clean after this, or the sample wasn't perfect.
Exactly, dead end. But genetic genealogy, or GG, the thing that finally cracked this, it uses a totally different method, SNP mapping. It looks at hundreds of thousands of markers.
More detailed.
Hugely more detailed. It lets investigators build these massive family trees by finding distant relatives, third cousins, fourth cousins, whatever, people who voluntarily put their DNA into public ancestry sites like GED Match.
So they didn't need the killer's DNA in the system, just a distant relative.
That's the breakthrough. Find the cousins, build the tree back, and then forward until you narrow it down.
And that's what happened here. That decades-old DNA sample run through GG databases.
Pointed straight to one person, 70-year-old Alan Lee Phillips. February 24th, 2021, he was arrested. Charged with kidnapping, assault with a deadly weapon.
Incredible, after almost 40 years.
Yeah, a huge moment of relief for the community, the remaining family. But the sources, they really make a point of mentioning the human cost of that delay.
Right.
Bobbie Jo's brother, Kelly, and her dad, Thomas, they both passed away before they ever found out who killed her. The science worked eventually, but too late for them.
All right, our next case. Gayle Barrus, 1988, Michigan. This one really highlights, I think, the incredible importance of just keeping stuff, meticulous evidence storage.
And some pretty high-stakes detective work when the tech finally catches up.
Okay, tell us about Gayle.
Gayle Barrus was 30, a single mom with 3 kids, working 2 bar jobs in Battle Creek trying to make ends meet. She was last seen really early in the morning, between 3 and 4 a.m., October 9th, 1988.
Leaving a coffee shop.
Yeah, Speed's coffee shop. And she was with a dark-haired man. 16 days later, October 25th, hunters find her body out on River Road in Emmett. She'd been stabbed and sexually assaulted.
Okay, now this is where the investigation hits a really weird snag almost immediately, right? A key suspect who dies before they could even talk to him about Gayle.
Exactly. It's this incredibly cruel coincidence. Just 3 days before they even found Gayle's body, on October 22nd, police approached this guy, 24-year-old Roger Plato.
But not about Gayle.
No, completely unrelated at that point. They were looking at him because his car matched the description from a different abduction and assault case entirely.
Okay. So what happened with Plato?
Well, when the detectives tried to detain him, basically just talked to him in a parking lot, he apparently became really aggressive, fought one of the detectives.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and during the struggle, tragically, he tried to wrestle the detective's gun away and was shot. He died from his injuries right there.
So because this all happened before Gayle's body was even identified?
He was never interviewed about her. never officially considered a suspect in her murder at that time.
But something crucial happened because he died in that confrontation.
Yes, this is key. Because he died in custody, standard procedure kicked in. An autopsy was performed, and as part of that, a routine blood sample was taken. And critically, it was stored, put away in a private lab before his body was cremated.
If he hadn't resisted, if he'd just been arrested quietly for the other thing, or died differently,
That sample might never have existed. It was pure chance, really, tied to the manner of his death.
So Plato's dead. They have this unidentified DNA from Gayle's case. Where do investigators go next?
They shifted focus. They looked hard at Plato's friend and former roommate, a guy named Richard Compton, described in the sources as having a, quote, vast criminal career.
Okay, sounds promising.
He seemed like a strong possibility, but again, the case eventually went cold. For decades. Until 2018. 30 years later, a Battle Creek cold case detective, Scott Marshall, picks it up again. He's reviewing everything and realizes something huge.
What's that?
They had DNA evidence from the Barrus crime scene, but they'd never actually gotten a comparison sample from Richard Compton himself. He died back in 2009, down in Texas, aged 59.
So another dead end. Or
A massive long shot. Detective Marshall decides to go for it. He gets a warrant to exhume Richard Compton's body from a cemetery down in Austin, Texas.
whoa, exhuming someone after 9 years. That's a huge deal.
It's enormous, legally complex, logistically difficult, expensive, coordinating between states, all based on this hunch about a guy who's been dead for nearly a decade.
So did the gamble pay off? Was Compton the killer?
No, his DNA did not match the main profile from Gayle Barrus' body, the killer's DNA.
So all that effort.
Not entirely wasted, though, because Compton's DNA did match something else, some previously unidentified hairs that were found back at the original crime scene.
Really? So he wasn't the killer, but he was there.
It strongly suggests he was there, maybe as a witness, maybe even helping Plato somehow, we don't know for sure. But the exhumation, while it didn't finger the killer, it eliminated one major suspect and placed Compton squarely at the scene.
Okay, so Compton's likely involved somehow, but not the main guy. The actual solution, then, didn't come from this big investigative push.
No, it came almost unbelievably from just good record keeping. Pure chance, really. November 2020.
What happened?
A sergeant, Chris Bassick, was just doing inventory, standard stuff at the Calhoun County Sheriff's Department, and he finds this old labeled evidence vial.
Don't tell me.
Yep. Containing the original blood sample taken from Roger Plato back in 1988.
The guy who died 3 days before Gayle's body was found.
The very same guy. Remember, that sample was taken because of the other potential assault case he was being looked at for, not Gayle's. It was just stored properly for 32 years.
That is absolutely incredible. Administrative diligence saves the day.
Totally. So finally, this decades-old sample gets sent for testing. January 2021, the state police lab gets the results. Plato's blood DNA is a direct match to the killer's DNA profile found on Gayle Barrus' body.
Confirmed. He was the one.
He was the one. So the conclusion is just staggering. Both the guy who did it, Roger Plato, and the guy who was likely there with him, Richard Compton, both died years before they could be charged.
But the family got closure. Because someone stored a blood vial correctly 32 years ago.
Exactly. Detective Marshall was quoted saying, DNA tech is the future for solving these cold cases, but this story really shows that future completely depends on how well we preserve the past evidence, even the seemingly unimportant stuff.
Okay, let's shift gears now to the earliest case in our deep dive. Stephanie Sommers, murdered back in 1980 in Silver Lake, Los Angeles. And this one has a really unique twist.
Yeah, this isn't about genetic genealogy finding someone walking free. This killer was already behind bars for a long, long time.
Tell us about Stephanie.
Stephanie Sommers was 36. She'd recently moved to the Silver Lake neighborhood in LA. It was August 30th, 1980, a Saturday. She was supposed to pick up her nephew, Kelly Roberts, who was 11. Big plans.
Birthday trip.
Birthday trip to Six Flags Magic Mountain, but she never showed up.
Oh, no.
Yeah. The family got worried, called the police. Authorities went to her apartment, and they found her body inside.
And the case went cold.
Pretty quickly, they collected forensic evidence, got a profile, but the leads just dried up, cold for more than 30 years. 3 decades.
Until 2014, what happened then?
Well, this is where those forensic databases really show their worth. Constant rechecking pays off. A new comparison run in 2014 finally got a hit. The profile from Stephanie Sommers' body matched a man named Harold Anthony Parkinson.
And Parkinson.
At the time of the murder back in 1980, he lived just a mile away from Stephanie.
Okay, but where was he in 2014 when they got the match?
Here's the twist. He wasn't out on the street. He wasn't even awaiting trial for something else. He was already serving 15 years to life in Chuckwalla Valley State Prison.
Already incarcerated. For what?
For a totally unrelated crime. The shooting death of a man named Derek Eugene Perry. And get this, Parkinson committed that murder just 8 months after he killed Stephanie Sommers.
Wow. So he killed Stephanie in August 80, killed Derek Perry around April 81.
And he started serving his sentence for the Perry murder in March 1982. He'd been locked up for almost 40 years for that second crime when they finally linked him back to Stephanie.
That's incredible. Justice delayed, but still potent. Did Perry's family know about this connection?
Yeah, the sources mentioned Perry's sister, Dolly. After Parkinson was charged with the Sommers murder, she spoke out, called her brother Derek brilliant and Parkinson a dangerous man. It really underscored his pattern of violence.
So Parkinson goes on trial for the Sommers murder in 2021. What was his defense? He couldn't exactly deny the DNA, could he?
No, but his lawyer tried a very specific tactic. They didn't dispute the DNA belonged to Parkinson. Instead, they tried to explain why it was there without it being evidence of an assault or murder.
How?
They argued Parkinson hadn't assaulted Stephanie at all. They claimed the two were actually romantically involved and that they had had consensual sex a few days before her death. So the DNA was just leftover benign evidence of a relationship.
Huh. Trying to create reasonable doubt about the circumstances of the DNA being there. Clever in a way.
It was a gamble, but the prosecution came prepared. They had powerful counter-evidence about Stephanie's life at the time.
What kind of evidence?
Testimony from Stephanie's close friends. They testified that after a brief marriage had ended, Stephanie had told them very clearly she was only attracted to women, and in fact, she had recently been in a long-term relationship with another woman.
Ah, so that completely undermines the defense's story of a sudden, consensual, heterosexual fling right before her death.
Exactly. It made the defense claim seem highly improbable, and the judge clearly agreed.
Who was the judge?
Judge Kathleen Kennedy. She described the crime against Stephanie as, quote, very degrading, horrible, violent, and stated there was proof beyond a reasonable doubt that Parkinson was responsible not just for being there, but for the murder and assault.
So the verdict?
Guilty. On February 4th, 2021, Harold Parkinson, 61 years old by then, was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for Stephanie Sommers' murder, adding that onto the sentence he was already serving.
It really shows the power of that stored DNA, doesn't it? Even if a killer is locked up for something else, justice for earlier victims can still catch up decades later if the evidence is preserved and the system keeps checking. Okay, let's head back to Colorado for our fourth case. 1981 this time. Sylvia May Quayle. And this one, wow, it features maybe the most dramatic wrong turn in our list.
Oh, yeah, a huge misdirection involving a very famous or infamous name.
Tell us about Sylvia first.
Sylvia May Quayle was 34, worked as a secretary, loved art, loved cooking. She lived in Cherry Hills Village, Colorado. And tragically, incredibly close to her parents, only about 150 feet away.
And her father found her.
Yes. Her father found her body just before 8 a.m. on August 4th, 1981.
What were the details of the crime scene?
It was brutal. She had been shot, stabbed multiple times, strangled, and sexually assaulted. The official cause of death was loss of blood. Investigators noted some key things right away.
Like what?
The phone line was cut, both inside the house and outside. Clear sign of someone trying to prevent a call for help. And a bathroom window screen had been taken off and just tossed into some tall weeds outside. Looked like the obvious entry point.
Okay, so clear signs of a violent planned attack. Where did the investigation go wrong?
Well, you have to remember the context of the early 80s. Law enforcement was under immense pressure to solve violent crimes, and sometimes, well, they grabbed onto seemingly easy answers, especially confessions.
And someone confessed to Sylvia's murder.
Someone notorious. In 1983, the serial killer Otis Elwood Toole confessed.
Otis Toole. Him and Henry Lee Lucas, right. They confessed to hundreds of murders, didn't they? Many falsely.
Exactly. They were known for these detailed, often plausible, but ultimately false confessions. Sometimes for attention, sometimes maybe to bargain for better conditions. It created chaos for law enforcement nationwide.
But investigators had physical evidence from Sylvia's scene. Did they check Toole's confession against it?
Thankfully, yes, and they preserved that evidence. By 1993, a full decade after Toole's confession, DNA testing technology had advanced enough. They tested biological material found in the rug where Sylvia's body had lain.
Yeah.
The science spoke clearly. The DNA proved without a doubt that Otis Toole was not the source. He couldn't have been the killer.
So the charges against Toole were dropped.
Immediately dropped. This is such a powerful example of forensics acting as a crucial check. It prevented what could have been a terrible miscarriage of justice based entirely on a manipulative, false confession. Science saved the integrity of the case.
Okay, so Toole's out. The case goes back into the cold file, basically. But they still have that DNA profile from the rug.
They do. They actually cut out a section of that rug in 1995 specifically for more testing. By the year 2000, they managed to isolate a clean, unknown male DNA profile from it.
Progress. Did they get a match in CODIS?
Nope. Put it into the state and national databases, but nothing came back. No hits.
So that profile just sat there for another 20 years.
Another 2 decades just waiting. Until January 2020. The Cherry Hills Village investigators decide, okay, let's try the new tool, genetic genealogy.
So they had to convert the old STR profile.
Exactly. Convert it to the more detailed SNP format that works with the public ancestry databases like GED Match.
And did G work its magic again?
Like clockwork. Took about 4 months, but then boom, a solid lead emerged. A name, David Dwayne Anderson.
And who was he?
At the time of Sylvia's murder in 1981, Anderson was 22 years old, and he lived just a couple of miles away from her house.
Okay, so they have a name, a strong suspect. How do they confirm it? They need his DNA now, right?
Right. And this is where modern police work gets, well, kind of clever and maybe a little bit spy versus spy. Investigator Robert Fuller heads out to Cozad, Nebraska. That's where Anderson was living in 2020.
To get his DNA secretly.
Yep. The plan was a trash pull. Legally, once you put your trash out on the curb or in a public dumpster, it's considered abandoned property. Police can collect it without needing a warrant.
So Fuller is literally digging through Anderson's garbage.
Pretty much. He recovered 2 trash bags that Anderson had tossed into a public dumpster, went through them carefully, found about 15 different items that might have Anderson's DNA on them.
And did they find something usable?
They found the smoking gun, or rather the smoking can. Genetic material taken from a discarded vanilla Coke can found in that trash.
A vanilla Coke can.
A vanilla Coke can. The DNA from that can was a perfect match to the unknown male DNA profile recovered from the crime scene back in 1981.
That is just amazing. Solving a 40-year-old murder because of a soda can in the trash.
It really illustrates how everyday items can hold the key. So the DNA is airtight. Did they find anything else linking Anderson, like behaviorally?
They did. Looking back at his history, they found Anderson had a string of burglaries, at least 8 home and business break-ins in the Denver area between 81 and 86.
Around the same time period.
Exactly. And crucially, in at least one of those earlier burglaries, his method, his MO, was specifically noted as removing a window screen and tossing it aside to get in.
Just like at Sylvia's house.
Precisely like the clue found at Sylvia Quayle's house nearly 40 years before. The MO plus the DNA. That sealed it.
So Anderson gets arrested.
David Dwayne Anderson, age 62, arrested February 10th, 2021. But again, that bittersweet note. The sources confirm Sylvia's parents, William and Mary Quayle. They both passed away long before their daughter's killer was finally identified and charged. All right, for our final deep dive today, we're looking at the most recent case on the list, chronologically speaking. Bonnie Baker, murdered in 1998.
Yeah, and this one is driven by just intense, destructive jealousy. And it hinged, ultimately, on an anonymous caller finding the courage to step forward years later.
Tell us about Bonnie Baker.
Bonnie was 47, lived in Denver, described as a really good, dedicated employee. She shared an apartment with her boyfriend, a man named Crespin Nenny Perez. On June 30th, 1998, she was out celebrating, got a promotion at work.
Nice. Out with friends?
Yeah, celebrating with friends in Golden, Colorado. But then N.A. Perez showed up.
And that changed the mood.
Dramatically. See, Nene Perez had actually been fired from his job about a month earlier. And witnesses at the party said he arrived looking absolutely furious. Fuming with rage was the description. Red, glazed eyes, apparently extremely jealous seeing Bonnie dancing, celebrating.
That sounds dangerous.
It clearly felt dangerous to Bonnie. Her last known words, spoken to a friend at the party, are just chilling. She said, "It would be better if I just go now, or it will be worse."
Oh, wow. She knew.
She seemed to sense the danger. They left the party together.
Okay, so they leave. What happens next?
Well, later that same night, around 8 p.m., the investigation gets this very strange but critical piece of information. An anonymous 911 call.
Anonymous.
Develop.
From a payphone.
Yes, exactly. An unidentified woman calls 911 from a payphone, and she reports that Crespin Perez has killed Bonnie. Killed her at their apartment on West Louisiana Avenue.
He gave specifics.
Incredible specifics. She claimed he was planning to drive to Mexico, right then, in a specific red car with Colorado plates, and that he had Bonnie's body in the trunk, planning to, quote, meaning dump, somewhere along the way.
That's incredibly detailed for an anonymous tip. Did police check the apartment?
They did. They went to the apartment, but nobody was there. And crucially, they didn't see any immediate signs of a struggle. The place looked remarkably clean.
Cleaned up.
We'll get back to that. The evidence trail really picks up the next day. Netta Perez's car, a red Geo Prism, matching the exact license plate the anonymous caller gave.
Where was it found?
Found crashed and abandoned near Globe, Arizona, heading south towards Mexico, just like the caller said.
Was there evidence in the car?
Yes. Police collected blood evidence from the trunk liner, consistent with a body having been there.
Okay, so they have the car, the blood, the anonymous tip, but no body.
No body. And the case kind of stalls. Then, a year later, July 31st, 1999, some skeletal remains, including a skull, are found way out in a remote part of the Navajo Nation territory in New Mexico. Two boys riding horses stumbled upon them.
Could they link the remains to Bonnie Baker?
Not immediately. The autopsy at the time was inconclusive. Without a positive ID, without a clear cause of death determined from the remains, they couldn't officially connect them to Bonnie. So again, the case goes cold. For years.
Until someone reopens it.
Until October 2012. Persistence again. Detective Kenneth Klaus reopens the Bonnie Baker cold case, and by this time, DNA technology has advanced significantly.
Able to test the skeletal remains properly.
Exactly. Advanced DNA testing finally confirms definitively that the skeletal remains found way back in 1999 in New Mexico. They belong to Bonnie Baker.
Wow. So the anonymous caller was right all along. The body was dumped along the way to Mexico.
Precisely. And confirming the remains were Bonnie's. That seemed to be the catalyst for the final piece of the puzzle.
What happened?
April 4th, 2013, almost 15 years after the murder, that anonymous 911 caller, the woman from the payphone, she finally came forward, identified herself to Detective Klaus.
Why then? What did she say?
It seems the confirmation about Bonnie's remains prompted her. She filled in the gaps. She admitted that she was the one who cleaned the apartment before the police got there that night in 1998.
Ah, that's why it looked clean. What did she clean up?
Broken plates, broken glasses, an overturned kitchen table, clear signs of a violent struggle that she erased.
Did she say why Nene Perez killed Bonnie? Or what he said?
She relayed a chilling statement Nene Perez made directly to her that night. Apparently in a very cold, calculated way, he told her, "I know that you don't like Bonnie. Something bad happened to us. You will never have to see Bonnie again because I am going to make her disappear."
Wow. That's practically a confession relayed through her.
It's incredibly damning. So now you have her direct testimony corroborating the anonymous call from years ago. You have the DNA confirming the remains are Bonnie. You have the blood evidence from Nene Perez's car trunk.
It all fits together. Nene Perez is clearly the killer.
The evidence was overwhelming. A warrant was issued for his arrest, but there was one more hurdle.
He wasn't in the U.S.
No, he'd made it to Mexico back in '98 and had been living there ever since. Getting him back took years of diplomatic negotiation and legal processes. Extradition.
But they finally got him.
They finally secured his extradition back to Colorado. He was brought back to face charges, and a preliminary reading in his case was held on January 27, 2021. Justice finally caught up, more than 2 decades later. #Outtrack Games.
Okay, let's just take a breath and process that. 5 cases, spanning nearly 2 decades, 1980, 81, 82, 88, 98, all of them seeing these major breakthroughs cracked wide open in a single calendar year, 2021.
It's pretty remarkable when you line them up like that.
What really jumps out, I think, is just how fundamentally forensic science, especially DNA, has just completely changed the whole game, the whole concept of justice almost.
Absolutely. You really see the evolution laid bare in these stories. Think about the Oberholtzer case, the orange socks. Started with purely circumstantial evidence pointing wrongly at the husband for years.
Right, based on flimsy connections and a sock.
Then, early DNA clears him in the 90s, which was huge then. But the case still sits cold until genetic genealogy finally points to Alan Phillips decades later. It's like multiple technological leaps were needed for that one case.
And you see the sheer effort involved sometimes.
Right.
Like the decision to exhume Richard Compton in the Gayle Barrus case Huge risk, huge cost.
Yeah, and it didn't even finger the main killer directly, but it was still crucial. It ruled out Compton as the killer and placed him at the scene, which narrowed things down.
Contrast that with the Sylvia Quayle case, the vanilla Coke can, a totally different approach. Low cost, kind of sneaky, but brilliant police work, using discarded trash to get that final DNA confirmation.
It shows there's artistry almost to the investigation still, even with the high tech. But the common thread, especially for the 2021 resolutions in the Quayle and Oberholtzer Schnee cases, is definitely the power of genetic genealogy.
Right, that ability to bridge decades where traditional databases like CODIS came up empty.
Exactly. GG works when the sample might be old, maybe degraded slightly, or when the killer just never got into the official system. It bypasses those limitations by looking for family instead of the perpetrator themselves. It's a radical shift.
But it also feels fragile sometimes. Like the Gayle Barrus case. It hinged entirely on that one blood vial from Roger Plato being stored correctly for 32 years. By accident, almost.
Totally. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other crucial piece of evidence is sitting in an evidence locker right now? Maybe waiting for a technology that doesn't even exist yet. Or maybe just waiting for someone to do a proper inventory, like Sergeant Bassick did.
Yeah. Which brings up, I guess, the bigger picture. We celebrate these wins, the technology, the closure for the families in 2021.
But we have to acknowledge the cost of the wait, the human cost. In 3 of these 5 cases we discussed, Schnee, Oberholtzer, Quayle, and Barrus, the victims' parents died before they ever found out who was responsible.
That's heartbreaking. The science triumphed, but the timing.
Yeah.
It's bittersweet. Justice delayed feels like a different kind of pain.
It absolutely is. The cost of a cold case isn't just, numbers in an unsolved file. It's measured in those decades of uncertainty, of grief without answers for the people left behind.
Ones who needed that justice the most.
Right. So while the technology like GG is incredible, maybe the ultimate lesson here is about this tension. The tension between what technology can do and our societal responsibility to victims, to families, but also maybe considering privacy.
Yeah, GG relies on people voluntarily sharing their most personal data in public databases.
It does. It's this constant balancing act, isn't it? Using these powerful tools requires walking this careful legal and ethical line. So the final thought maybe is, what is the true cost of a cold case, even one that eventually gets solved? And how does this relentless march of technology keep changing the equation between solving crimes, seeking justice, and protecting personal genetic privacy?
Definitely something to think about.
Yeah.
How history itself is being rewritten one DNA match at a time.